The following presentation is best experienced with headphones.
Hello, honored guests. Today we are once more heading to the gardens. Today has been so lovely that Lady Morgana insisted on returning there again, even though this is for your third visit. I do hope Grandmaster Emrys is okay. He rushed out so quickly earlier, looking troubled, but he didn't say a thing to me about where he was going. Oh well, I'm sure it'll be fine. Now, who could that be at the door? Everyone I was expecting today is here. Nothing for it but to go check. At any rate, we have arrived. I leave you now with the circle.
Hello, honored guests. I finally had a day off and was able to get to the room before you this time.
Yes. Welcome, honored guests. You've beat some of us here, though. We were just waiting on the others to get here to begin.
I think we will be all that are gathering here today. This morning Emrys was speaking of strange portents, and told me he would be off to consult the Oracle of Delphi for the next few days, and the traveler was consulting with the new librarian Greer on the contents of his book. The two of them were so deep in their research I did not want to disturb them.
So it will just be the three of us this evening?
So it would seem.
Yes, Nemo. Is there a problem?
Not a problem, really. More of a surprise. You see, no sooner had I finished guiding our honored guests to you than I heard another knock at the door. Of course, I rushed to answer it, and who should I find there but some old friends finally returned at long last.
Hello, Lady Morgana.
It is a pleasure to see you again. And I see we have guests here in the house once again.
And new faces around the fire, too. But where is the Grand Master? I was eager to see him again after so long.
Elias, Mr. Forgettable, oh, and Ileana, I am so happy to see you. Emrys and I were worried that we would never see you again, especially after so many of our messages and letters went unanswered.
Each of us were preoccupied these last few centuries.
More on that later, though. Don't keep us in suspense a moment longer. Now, who are these new members of the Circle?
As much as I would love to meet everyone properly, the flames are starting to get a little impatient with us.
Yes, it seems introductions will have to wait.
It has been a long time since I gazed into their depths, but I do see a crackle of a story on those flames. One that the flames are eager to have told.
Ah, it looks like we will be returning to our old friends at River's Edge to conclude their tale.
A tale first published by Kenneth Grahame in 1908.
The Wind in the Willows. This way, dear guests. Did you practice your rowing skills? I hope Mole did. This way.
By the time he came down again, luncheon was on the table, and very glad Toad was to see it.
While they ate, Toad told the rat all his adventures, dwelling chiefly on his own cleverness. But the more he talked and boasted, the more grave and silent the rat became.
When at last Toad had talked himself to a standstill, there was silence for a while, and then the rat said,
Now, Toady, I don't want to give you pain after all you've been through already. But seriously, don't you see what an awful animal you've been making of yourself? On your own admission, you've been handcuffed, imprisoned, starved, chased, terrified out of your life. Where's the amusement in that? And all because you must go and steal a motor car. You know that you've never had anything but trouble from motor cars from the moment you first set your eyes on one. When are you going to be sensible and think of your friends and try and be a credit to them?
But it was fun, though. Awful fun. Quite right, Ratty. How sound you always are. Yes, I've been conceited. I can quite see that. But now I'm going to be a good toad, and not do it any more. As for motor cars, I've not been at all so keen about them since my last ducking in that river of yours. I'm going to stroll quietly down to Toad Hall and get into clothes of my own and set things going again on the old lines.
Stroll quietly down to Toad Hall? What are you talking about? Do you mean to say you haven't heard?
Heard what? Go on, Ratty. Quick, don't spare me. What haven't I heard?
Do you mean to tell me that you've heard nothing about the Stoats and the Weasels?
What? The Wild Wooders? No, not a word. What have they been doing?
And how they've been and taken Toad Hall?
Toad leaned his elbows on the table and his chin on his paws, and a large tear welled up in each of his eyes.
Go on, Ratty. Tell me all. The worst is over. I am an animal again. I can bear it.
When you got into that trouble of yours, well, it was a good deal talked about down here, naturally. Not only along the riverside, but even in the wild wood. Animals took sides, as always happens. The river banker stuck up for you, and said you had been infamously treated, and there was no justice to be had in the land nowadays. But the wild wood animals said hard things, and served you right, and it was time that this sort of thing was stopped. But Mole and Badger, they stuck out, through thick and thin, that you would come back again soon. Somehow. They didn't know exactly how, but somehow.
The best of friends.
So they arranged to move the things into Toad Hall, and slept there, and kept it aired, and have it all ready for you when you turned up. They didn't guess what was going to happen, of course. Still, they had the suspicions of the wildwood animals. Now I come to the most painful and tragic part of my story.
Oh.
One dark night. It was a very dark night. A band of weasels, armed to the teeth, crept silently up the carriage drive to the front entrance. Simultaneously, a body of desperate ferrets, advancing through the kitchen garden, possessed themselves of the backyard and offices, while a company of skirmishing stoats, who stuck at nothing, occupied the conservatory and the billiard room, and held the French windows opening to the lawn. The Mole and Badger were sitting by the fire, telling stories, and suspected nothing, for it wasn't any night for any animal to be out in. When those bloodthirsty villains broke down the doors and rushed in upon them from every side, they made the best fight they could, but what was the good? They were unarmed and taken by surprise, and what can two animals do against hundreds? And the Wild Wooders have been living in Toad Hall ever since.
Oh, have they? I'll jolly soon see about that.
Oh, it's no good, Toad. You'd better come back and sit down. You'll only get into trouble.
But the toad was off, and there was no holding him.
He marched rapidly down the road till he got near his front gate, when suddenly there popped up from behind the fence a long yellow ferret with a bow and arrow.
Who comes there?
Stuffing nonsense. What do you mean by talking like that to me? Come out of that at once, or I'll...
The ferret said never a word, but she brought her bow and arrow up to her shoulder.
Toad prudently dropped flat in the road, and bam!
An arrow whistled over his head.
The startled Toad scrambled to his feet and scampered off down the road as hard as he could. And as he ran, he heard the ferret laughing.
He went back, very crestfallen, and told the water rat.
What did I tell you? It's no good. They've got sentries posted, and they're all armed. You must just wait. My advice to you is, considering the lateness of the hour, to sit down and have your supper, which will be on the table in a minute, and be very patient. For I'm convinced that we can do nothing until we have seen the Mole and the Badger, and hear their latest news, and held conference, and taken their advice in this difficult matter.
Oh, yes, of course, the Mole and the Badger. What's become of them? The dear fellows, I had forgotten all about them.
Well, you may ask. While you were riding about the country in expensive motor cars, those two poor devoted animals have been camping out in the open, in every sort of weather, watching over your house, patrolling your boundaries, keeping a constant eye on the stoats and the weasels, scheming and planning how to get your property back for you. You don't deserve to have such true and loyal friends, Toad. You really don't. Someday, when it's too late, you'll be sorry you didn't value them more while you had them.
I'm an ungrateful beast, I know. Let me go and find them out in the cold, dark night and share their hardships and try and prove by... hold on a bit. Surely I heard the chink of dishes on a tray. Supper's here at last. Hooray! Come on, Ratty.
They had just finished their meal and resumed their armchairs when there came a heavy knock at the door.
Toad was nervous, but the rat, nodding mysteriously at him, went straight up to the door and opened it, and in walked
Mr. Badger. He had all the appearance of one who for some nights had been kept away from home and all its little comforts and conveniences.
He came solemnly up to Toad, shook him by the paw, and said,
Welcome home, Toad. Alas, what am I saying? Home indeed. This is a poor homecoming, unhappy Toad.
Then he turned his back on him, sat down to the table, drew up his chair, and helped himself to a large slice of cold pie.
Toad was quite alarmed at this very serious and portentous style of greeting, but the rat whispered to him,
Never mind. Don't take any notice, and don't say anything to him just yet. He's always rather low and despondent when he's wanting his victuals. In half an hour time, he'll be quite a different animal.
So they waited in silence, and presently there came another and a lighter knock.
The rat, with a nod to Toad, went to the door and ushered in the mole, very shabby and unwashed, with bits of hay and straw sticking in his fur.
Hooray! Here's old Toad. Fancy having you back again. We never dreamt you would turn up so soon. Why, you must have managed to escape, you clever and ingenious, intelligent Toad.
The rat, alarmed, pulled him by the elbow, but it was too late. Toad was puffing and swelling already.
Clever? Oh, no. I'm not really clever according to my friends. I have only broken out of the strongest prison in England, that's all, and captured a railway train and escaped on it, that's all, and disguised myself and gone about the country humbugging everybody, that's all. Oh, no, I'll tell you one or two of my little adventures, Mole, and you shall judge for yourself.
Well, supposing you talk while I eat. Not a bite since breakfast. Oh, bye. Oh, bye.
And he sat down and helped himself.
Don't you egg him on, Mole, when you know what he is. But please, tell us as soon as possible what the position is, and what's best to be done now that Toad is back at last.
The position's about as bad as it can be. As far as what's can be done, why, blast if I know. The Badger and I have been round and round the place, by night and by day. Always the same thing. Sentries posted everywhere. Guns poked out of us. Stones thrown at us. Always an animal on the lookout. And when they see us, my, how they do laugh. That's what annoys me most.
It's a very difficult situation. But I think I see now, in the depths of my mind, what Toad really ought to do. I will tell you. He ought to...
No, he oughtn't. Nothing of the sort. You don't understand. What he ought to do is, he ought to...
Well, I shan't do it anyway. I'm not going to be ordered about by you fellows. It's my house we're talking about, and I know exactly what to do. And I'll tell you, I'm going to...
By this time they were all three talking at once, at the top of their voices, and the noise was simply deafening, when a thin, dry voice made itself heard, saying,
like this
at once, all of you.
And instantly everyone was silent.
It was the Badger who, having finished his pie, had turned round in his chair and was looking at them severely. When he saw that he had secured their attention, he said,
Toad, you bad, troublesome little animal. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? What do you think your father, my old friend, would have said if he had been here tonight? and had known of all your goings-on.
Toad, who was on the sofa by this time with his legs up, rolled over on his face, shaken by sobs of contrition.
There. Never mind. Stop crying. We're going to let bygones be bygones and try and turn over a new leaf. But what the mole says is quite true. The stoats are on guard at every point, and they make the best sentinels in the world. It's quite useless to think of attacking the place. They're too strong for us.
Then it's all over. I shall go and enlist for a soldier and never see my dear Toad Hall any more.
Come, cheer up, Toady. There are more ways of getting back a place than taking it by storm. I haven't said my last word yet. Now, I'm going to tell you a great secret.
Toad sat up slowly and dried his eyes.
Secrets had an immense attraction for him, because he could never keep one.
There is an underground passage that leads from the riverbank quite near here, right up into the middle of Toad Hall.
Oh, nonsense, Badger. You've been listening to some of the yarns they spin in the public houses about here. I know every inch of Toad Hall inside and out. Nothing of the sort, I do assure you.
My young friend, your father was a particular friend of mine and told me a great deal he wouldn't have dreamt of telling you. He discovered that passage. He didn't make it, of course. That was done hundreds of years before he ever came to live there, and he repaired it and cleaned it out because he thought it might come in useful someday, in case of trouble or danger. And he showed it to me. He told me.
Don't let my son know about it. He's a good boy, but very light and volatile in character, and simply cannot hold his tongue. If he's ever in a real fix, and it would be of use to him, you may tell him about the secret passage, but not before.
The other animals looked hard at Toad to see how he would take it. Toad was inclined to be sulky at first, but he brightened up immediately, like the good fellow he was.
Well. Perhaps I am a bit of a talker. Never mind. Go on, Badger. How's this passage of yours going to help us?
I've found out a thing or two lately. I got Otter to disguise herself as a sweep and call at the back door with brushes over her shoulder asking for a job. There's going to be a big banquet tomorrow night. It's somebody's birthday. The Chief Weasels, I believe. And all the weasels will be gathered together in the dining hall, eating and drinking and laughing and carried on suspecting nothing. No guns, no swords, no sticks, no arms of any sort whatever.
But the sentinels will be posted as usual.
Exactly. That is my point. The weasels will trust entirely to their excellent sentinels. And that is where the passage comes in. That very useful tunnel leads right up under the butler's pantry next to the dining hall.
Ah, the squeaky board under the butler's pantry. Now I understand it.
We shall creep out quietly into the butler's pantry.
With our pistols and swords and sticks.
And rush upon them.
And whack 'em, and whack 'em, and whack 'em.
Very well, then. Our plan is settled, and there's nothing more for you to argue and squabble about. So, as it's getting very late, all of you go right off to bed at once. We will make all the necessary arrangements in the course of the morning tomorrow.
The three slept. The rat, on the other hand, was running round the room busily with his arms full of weapons of every kind, distributing them in 4 little heaps on the floor, saying excitedly under his breath as he ran.
Here's a sword for the rat, here's a sword for the mole, here's a sword for the toad, here's a sword for the badger, here's a pistol for the rat, here's a pistol for the mole, here's a pistol for the toad, here's a pistol for the badger.
The anxious and laborious rat continued his preparations and started running between his 4 little heaps, muttering,
Here's a belt for the rat, here's a belt for the mole, here's a belt for the toad, here's a belt for the badger.
His preparation took well into the next day, and when it began to grow dark, the rat, with an air of excitement and mystery, summoned them back into the parlor.
He stood each of them up alongside his little heap and proceeded to dress them up for the coming expedition.
First, there was a belt to go round each animal, then a sword to be stuck into each belt, and then the cutlass on the other side to balance it. Then a pair of pistols, a policeman's truncheon, several sets of handcuffs, some bandages, and sticking plaster, and a flask and a sandwich case.
The Badger laughed good-humoredly and said,
"Ha ha 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 ha. All right, Ratty. It amuses you and it doesn't hurt me. I'm going to do all I've got to do with this here stick."
Please, Badger. You know I shouldn't like you to blame me afterwards and say I had forgotten anything.
Now then, follow me. Mo first, 'cause I'm very pleased with him. Rat next. Toad last. And look here, Toady. Don't you chatter so much as usual, or you'll be sent back as sure as fate.
The toad was so anxious not to be left out that he took up the inferior position assigned to him without a murmur, and the animal set off.
The Badger led them along by the river for a little way, and then suddenly swung himself over the edge into a hole in the riverbank a little above the water.
The mole and the rat followed silently, swinging themselves successfully into the hole as they had seen the Badger do.
But when it came to Toad's turn, of course he managed to slip and fall into the water with a loud splash and a squeal of alarm.
He was hauled out by his friends, but the Badger was seriously angry and told him,
The very next time you make a fool of yourself, Toad, you will most certainly be left behind.
So at last they were in the secret passage, and the cutting-out expedition had really begun.
It was cold
and dark
and damp
and low and narrow,
and poor Toad began to shiver, partly from dread of what might be before him, partly because he was wet through.
Then he heard the rat call out warningly,
Come on, Toad.
We ought by now be pretty nearly under the hole.
Then suddenly they heard a confused murmur of sound, as if people were shouting and cheering and stamping on the floor and hammering on tables.
They are going it, the weasels. Come on.
They hurried along the passage till it came to a full stop, and they found themselves standing under the trapdoor that led up into the butler's pantry.
Such a tremendous noise was going on in the banqueting hall that there was little danger of being overheard, the Badger said.
Now, boys, all together.
And the four of them put their shoulders to the trapdoor and heaved it back.
Hoisting each other up, they found themselves standing in the pantry with only a door between them and the banqueting hall, where their unconscious enemies were carousing.
The noise, as they emerged from the passage, was simply deafening. At last, as the cheering and hammering slowly subsided, a voice could be made out, saying,
Well, I do not propose to detain you much longer, but before I resume my seat, I should like to say one word about our kind host, Mr. Toad. We all know Toad. Good Toad, modest Toad, honest Toad.
Only just let me get at him.
Hold hard a minute. Get ready, all of you.
Let me sing you a little song which I have composed on the subject of Toad. Toady went a-pleasuring gaily down the street.
The Badger drew himself up, took a firm grip of his stick with both paws, glanced around at his comrades, and cried,
The hour is come. Follow me!
And flung the door open wide.
My, what a squealing and a squeaking and a screeching filled the air!
Well might the terrified weasels dive under the tables and spring madly up at the windows.
Well might the ferrets rush wildly for the fireplace and get hopelessly jammed in the chimney.
Well might tables and chairs be upset and glass and china be sent crashing on the floor in the panic of that terrible moment when the four heroes strode wrathfully into the room. The mighty Badger, his whiskers bristling, his great cudgel whistling through the air.
Mole, black and grim, brandishing his stick and shouting his awful war cry.
A mole! A mole!
Rat, desperate and determined, his belt bulging with weapons of every age and every variety.
Toad, frenzied with excitement and injured pride, leaping into the air and emitting toad whoops that chilled them to the marrow.
Toady with the pleasuring, I'll pleasure 'em.
The affair was soon over.
Up and down the whole length of the hall strode the four friends, whacking with their sticks at every head that showed itself.
And in 5 minutes the room was clear.
Mole, you're the best of fellows. Just cut along outside and look after those stout centuries of yours and see what they're doing. I have an idea that, thanks to you, we shan't have much trouble from them tonight.
The mole vanished promptly through a window, and the badger bade the other two set the table on its legs again, pick up knives and forks and plates and glasses from the debris on the floor, and see if they could find materials for a supper.
They were just about to sit down when the mole clambered in through the window, chuckling with an armful of rifles.
It's about over. From what I could make out, as soon as the stoats, who were very nervous and jumpy already, heard the shrieks and the yells and the uproar in the hall, some of them threw down their rifles and fled. The others stood fast for a bit, but when the weasels came rushing out upon them, they thought they were betrayed. They all disappeared by now, one way or another, and I've got the rifles. So that's all right.
Excellent and deserving animal.
Toad, like the gentleman he was, put all his jealousy from him and said heartily,
Thank you kindly, dear Mole, for all your pains and trouble tonight, and especially for your cleverness this morning.
There spoke my brave Toad.
So they finished their supper in great joy and contentment, and presently retired to rest between clean sheets, safe in Toad's ancestral home.
The following morning, Toad, who had overslept himself as usual, came down to breakfast disgracefully late.
When he had nearly finished, the badger looked up and remarked rather shortly,
I'm sorry, Toad, but I'm afraid there's heavy morning's work in front of you. You see, we really ought to have a banquet at once to celebrate this affair. It's expected of you. In fact, it's the rule.
Oh, all right. Anything to oblige. Though why on earth you should want to have a banquet in the morning, I cannot understand. But you know I do not live to please myself, but merely to find out what my friends want, and then try and arrange it for 'em. You dear old badger.
Don't pretend to be stupider than you really are. And don't chuckle and splutter in your coffee while you're talking. It's not manners. What I mean is, the banquet will be at night, of course, but the invitations will have to be written and got off at once, and you've got to write 'em. Now, sit down at that table. There's stacks of letter paper on it with Toad Hall at the top in blue and gold. And write invitations to all our friends, and if you stick to it, we shall get them out before luncheon. I'll bear a hand, too, and take my share of the burden. I'll order the banquet.
What? Me stop indoors and write a lot of rotten letters on a jolly morning like this, when I want to go around my property and set everything and everybody to rights and swagger about and enjoy myself? Certainly not. I'll see you.
The badger's stare made Toad change his tune.
Stop a minute, though. Why, of course, dear Badger. What is my pleasure or convenience compared with that of others? You wish it done, and it shall be done. Go, Badger, order the banquet, order what you like, then join our young friends outside in their innocent mirth, oblivious of me and my cares and toils. I sacrifice this fair morning on the altar of duty and friendship.
The badger looked at him very suspiciously, but Toad's frank, open countenance made it difficult to suggest any unworthy motive in this change of attitude.
Toad wrote out the invitations as follows.
Speech by Toad. There will be other speeches by Toad during the evening. Address by Toad. Synopsis. Our prison systems, the waterways of old England, property, its rights and its duties. Back to the land. A typical English squire. Song by Toad, composed by himself. Other compositions by Toad will be sung in the course of the evening by the composer.
The idea pleased him mightily, and he worked very hard and got all the letters finished by noon.
When the other animals came back to luncheon, the rat caught Toad by the arm.
Now, look here, Toad. It's about this banquet, and I'm very sorry to have to speak to you like this, but we want you to understand clearly, once and for all, that there are going to be no speeches and no songs. Try and grasp the fact that on this occasion, we're not arguing with you. We're just telling you.
Mayn't I sing them just one little song?
No, not one little song. It's no good, Toady. You know well that your songs are all conceit and boasting and vanity, and your speeches are all self-praise and well, the gross exaggeration and
gas.
It's for your own good, Toady. You know you must turn over a new leaf sooner or later. And now seems a splendid time to begin. A sort of turning point in your career. Please don't think that saying this all doesn't hurt me more than it hurts you.
Toad remained a long while plunged in thought. At last he raised his head.
However, you are right, I know, and I am wrong. Henceforth I will be a very different Toad. My friends, you shall never have occasion to blush for me again. But, oh dear, this is a hard world.
And pressing his handkerchief to his face, he left the room with faltering footsteps.
Badger, I feel like a brute. I wonder what you feel like.
Oh, I know. But the thing had to be done. This good fellow has got to live here and hold his own and be respected. Would you have him a common laughing-stock, mocked and jeered at by stoats and weasels?
Oh, of course not.
At last the hour for the banquet begun to draw near, and Toad, who on leaving the others had retired to his bedroom, was still sitting there, melancholy and thoughtful.
Gradually his countenance cleared, and he began to smile long, slow smiles.
At last he got up, locked the door,
drew the curtains across the windows,
collected all the chairs in the room, and arranged them in a semicircle,
and took up his position in front of them, swelling visibly.
Then he bowed, coughed twice, and, letting himself go, with uplifted voice he sang to the enraptured audience that his imagination so clearly saw. Toad's last little song!
The Toad came home. There was panic in the parlors and howling in the halls. There was crying in the cowsheds and shrieking in the stalls. When the Toad came home, there was smashing in of window and crashing in of door. There was chiving of weasels that fainted on the floor. When the Toad came home, bang go the drums, the trumpeters are tooting, and the soldiers are saluting, and the cannon they are shooting, and the motor cars are hooting as the hero comes. Shout, hooray! And let each one of the crowd try and shout it very loud, in honor of an animal we're justly proud, for it's Toad's great day.
He sang this very loud, with great unction and expression, and when he had done, he sang it all over again.
Then he heaved a deep sigh, and dipped his hairbrush in the water jug, parted his hair in the middle, and plastered it down very straight and sleek on each side of his face.
And, unlocking the door, went quietly down the stairs to greet his guests.
All the animals cheered when he entered.
Hey, brother! Toady! And crowded round to congratulate him and say nice things about his courage and his cleverness and his fighting qualities, but Toad only smiled faintly and murmured,
Not at all. On the contrary, Badger's was the mastermind. The mole and the water rat bore the brunt of the fighting. I merely served in the ranks and did little or nothing.
He was indeed an altered Toad. For in the coming weeks, Toad, after due consultation with his friends, selected a handsome gold chain and locket set with pearls, which he dispatched to the gaoler's daughter with a letter that even the Badger admitted to be grateful and appreciative.
And the engine driver, in his turn, was properly thanked and compensated for all his pains and trouble.
Under severe compulsion from the Badger, even the barge woman was, with some trouble, sought out, and the value of her horse discreetly made good to her.
Sometimes, in the course of long summer evenings, the friends would take a stroll together in the wild wood, now successfully tamed, so far as they were concerned.
And it was pleasing to see how respectfully they were greeted by the inhabitants, and how the mother weasels would bring their young ones to the mouths of their holes and say, pointing,
"Look, baby, there goes the great Mr. Toad, and that's the gallant water rat, a terrible fighter walking along him. And yonder comes the famous Mr. Mole, of whom you so often have heard your father tell."
But when their infants were fractious and quite beyond control, they would quiet them by telling how,
"If you don't hush, the terrible grey badger will up and get you."
This was a base libel on the Badger, who, though he cared little about society, was rather fond of children, but it never failed to have its full effect.
And so the four friends lived happily
ever
after. The end.
Such a wholesome ending to such a wonderful tale.
And it was more thrilling than I expected.
I am unfamiliar with this tale, and I will have to visit the library and find the copy to read in its entirety.
There will be time for that later. Now is the time for proper introductions, which of course should be done in the proper way. Since we are all already familiar with Lady Morgana, I will go first as the next most senior member of the circle. I am the bearer of the seal of dark burgundy sequoia, and you may call me Mr. Forgettable.
I am the bearer of the seal of crimson yew, Ileana.
And I am the bearer of the seal of the emerald pistachio, known here as Elias Isaac.
I didn't know that there was a formal way of introducing ourselves like this. This whole thing is very fascinating.
Emrys and I let a lot of those formalities slip over the years, as it was just the two of us for so long.
Let the formalities slip? Inconceivable! Without rules and ritual, we are little better than beasts! No offense, Elias.
None taken, old friend.
Well, I am happy to participate if it makes your old friends feel more at home. I am the bearer of the seal of green alder, Lana Snow.
And you?
Oh, me! You can call me Jax. Everyone does. Just Jax. I guess if you were going to call me the bearer of anything, it would be pizzas. I don't have one of those seals. I honestly never heard about them until just now.
You don't have a seal?
And yet you are allowed to sit among our number and speak for the flames without the recognition of the house?
Lady Morgana, this is most irregular. Does the Grand Master know of this? Is this why he is not here?
I didn't know I was doing something wrong.
Calm down, everyone. Emrys knows all about Jax and isn't here because he went off to consult the Oracle of Delphi. Jax, everything is all right and you have nothing to worry about.
Nothing to...
As for the rest of you, I will happily address your concerns, but now is not the time. Our honored guests are still with us.
Yes. Before we continue, perhaps it is best to send our guests on their way. This is proving to be more exciting than we had planned.
Yes, I am sorry, honored guests, for my breach in decorum. I am sure you will find that I am normally a more reasonable and controlled person.
Worry not, honored guests. Just as the Circle has weathered all of the storms of its past, it will weather this one too, and we will see you again soon. But for now, Nan will show you out. Safe travels.
Honored guests, come, follow me, for you mustn't stay at our house for too long. Wasn't that a wonderful trip to Rat and Mole? Stay close behind, my guests, and whatever you do, don't answer any voices you may hear on the way out. And don't be tempted to go back to Water Rat's River. Well, not yet, at least. Oh, but do come back. Hearing the Circle's stories brings me to life.
You have been listening to The House of Branching Paths, a theatrical podcast experience brought to you by Round 2 of Productions, created by Mark Kilmer and Caroline Miller, with featured artists Kimmy Kidd, Bill Blanky, April Sita, Justin Panachia Shimza, Jamie Chandler, George Doerr, Joshua Towers, and Katie Bailey, with music by Elegy. For even more content, join us on our Patreon, or for more stories like these, be sure to visit your local library. Thank you for joining us, honored guests, and remember, the fire may burn low, but the stories are ever glowing.